I was feeling really good after meeting with the monk, and I went and just kind of focused on observing walking Rupa and Nama hearing and things like this as I was taking a walk around the grounds. And there's a nun here who was sweeping, and when she saw me walking, she gave me this look like she was waiting for me to ask for something, or like I was lost or something. It was surprising to me that it was not evident to her what I was doing, because that's what you're here to do, is just practice in these 4 positions. But I kind of allowed my mind to wander. In Thai it's called Phung, but just acknowledging that Nama is wandering, like it's a mental state. It's not something that you have to reject or have aversion to, because that actually creates problems in the mind that you don't want. So I wasn't judging that my mind was wandering. I was just observing that my mind was wandering and kind of letting it go so that it could come back. And I had some very surprising thoughts that aren't surprising in their unfamiliarity. I've definitely had them before. I just haven't had them in a very long time. So the thoughts I had kind of in my late teens or early 20s. And they didn't disturb me. They're very neutral feeling, but definitely the result of something that is caused by what I'm doing. So that's just interesting for me to observe. But anyway, I came back to my kuti, and I actually started getting in a state that that was the state that I was afraid of in coming here. Like, I was getting a little bit bored and frustrated. And it's because I was thinking about things that make me unhappy. And so instead of thinking to myself, don't think those things, I just had to concentrate on the fact that Nama is thinking those things. Like, it's not me, and they're not real. Like, they're just thoughts. It's like when you send a text to someone and you're waiting for them to respond back, and so you read into that silence everything, like everything, including the silence. And it's all coming from you. That's like 100% from you. It's got nothing to do with the other person, and when they answer back, they have no idea what your whole process has been, so it kind of is this funny, like, oh, that was all for nothing kind of thing. It feels a little bit like that. These thoughts, like this frustration that's all coming from me, and kind of wanting relief from those thoughts by someone else telling you otherwise, or alleviating your doubt for you, which definitely this process is helping me understand that I can't rely on that and don't want to rely on that. So I ended up taking a nap, which was to basically alleviate that frustration. I was tired, but just laid there observing my body position until I fell asleep. And when I woke up, it hadn't been very long, but it was starting to get dark. And for me, that feeling of waking up when it's starting to get dark is a really awful feeling. It's a kind of like laziness, or like this worry that then you're going to be awake all night and you've missed the day. And like, I don't know. It's a patterned thought, I think. When I wake up and it's starting to get dark, it never feels good. But so since waking up, I started practicing again. So observing my position. And then I tried a coloring book that I brought that's supposed to be kind of meditative, because I can just observe my sitting position, Rupa's sitting position, while kind of letting my mind go blank and coloring. And I actually grow bored of these books really fast. Like, it was useful in what I was trying to use it for in that moment, but I can't do it for very long. But so I started reading again, and I had actually read this chapter on how to do this practice prior to going and seeing the monk, but kind of quickly because I knew I had to meet him at 2. I was reading it a little bit faster before, but I also was not like comprehending it super well. And when I read it again, in the state that I was in and what I'd been doing, it really was the right moment to be reading it. I think in what I had been experiencing throughout those few hours before, as well as kind of being able to see the errors in the way I'd just been practicing, which is a lot like Muay Thai, actually. When I had this realization very recently with Chat Thai, that I did understand as weight transfer, but that there was a whole other level to it that I wasn't aware of until this lesson. The real excitement or brilliance of it was that I was able to self-correct. Like, I suddenly was able to see and feel what was right and what was wrong. And so that is similar to what reading these clarifications is being able to note whether I'm in the right practice or the wrong practice, which is really helpful. Because I was trying to take note of my mental state more than I should as a beginner. As a beginner, I really just need to be focusing on my body position only. So it's these 4 positions that the monk was talking about, these 4 strategies of just seeing sitting rupa, which is what I am now, standing rupa, walking rupa, or lying down rupa. And anything you do in those positions, you're still just seeing that position. It's like a doll doing these things. And by learning how to observe just the rupa, you will also learn how to observe nama. So you don't have to try to do both at the same time, because you actually aren't both at the same time. This is this really profound thing that I was reading about, that it's almost like the way they describe it is it's like a movie, right? So you watch a movie and it looks like it's all one thing, but it's actually all these individual cells running fast enough that you don't see them individually, and so you see it as like a moving picture. So your mental state and your physical state seem like they're all one thing, and you call it me or I, like I'm sitting and thinking and talking, but you're not. You're constantly flipping between those things because your consciousness and your body are not actually fully aligned, because there's no you, there's no self. And so by being corrected into just focusing on sitting rupa, standing rupa, whatever rupa is doing, and then also having this ability to understand why you're changing positions. So obviously if you're sitting and you're starting to get numb and then you stand up, you don't just stand up and now I'm observing standing. You have to track the pain between those two. So you understand that you're standing in order to alleviate the suffering of sitting, and that then you will have standing suffering, kind of thing. And just doing that made me realize that a lot of the things I do are alleviating suffering. You know, like if I went outside and swept my balcony, and that was to alleviate the suffering of kind of boredom. When I went for a walk, it was because I couldn't sit anymore. But it was just to alleviate that pain of sitting. And so then when I was walking and I had the pain of walking, I came back and sat down. So it's this really long process of just observing myself without judgment, which is really, really hard for me to do, but has been astonishingly with ease in trying to do it today. Like it's not a strain. And when I do find myself straining, it's much easier to kind of let go of it in this kind of objective way. But it occurred to me as I was reading how to do the practice. They describe how you eat, and as you're eating, you're understanding that is to alleviate the suffering of hunger. As you're walking or moving your body, if you get up to go to the bathroom, like any of these things, you're supposed to acknowledge and be mindful of the fact that is trying to alleviate suffering. Everything is just this constant chain of cause and effect of the cause of your suffering basically being impermanence, that you cannot keep sitting in a position, you can't stay in one way, and so you have to move, and then by moving it creates this other suffering, and so that's the cause and effect, and it just keeps going. And so you're supposed to be aware of, eating to extinguish hunger, going to the bathroom to relieve yourself, standing to alleviate the pain of sitting and this kind of thing. And you're supposed to kind of wait until you can't be in that position anymore. You don't hold a position while it hurts, like you're not trying to be ascetic about it. Anyway, what that made me realize is that it's a lot like taking care of a baby. Like, you take care of Rupa, your body, like a doll, not in anticipating needs, but in taking care of suffering. So you turn on the fan because Rupa is hot, or you wash your face because Rupa is uncomfortable with the grease on it. And that's very much like caring for a baby, like a doll. Like, you don't anticipate a whole lot. You're just constantly like shifting to make things comfortable. And it kind of made me realize that these people who talk about like the selflessness of having a baby, Pinu talks about when Bank was a baby and how it just completely changed his life. It never sounds good to me. This like, all of a sudden it's not about you and the selflessness and whatever. Like, that doesn't sound awesome to me. But the suffering of being with myself all the time, I do understand how not having that would be profoundly life-altering. But in caring for an infant and constantly taking care of its needs, it also forces you into the kind of meditation that I'm doing right now, which is only doing things to alleviate the suffering. So if you're a new mom or like a single dad, and you're pretty much only eating when you're really hungry because the pain of it forces you to be aware of it, otherwise you're just focusing on the baby. You only go to the bathroom when you can, like you only rest when you can, like when you're so exhausted. And so it's kind of this profound experience forced on you by taking care of this other Rupa that I'm doing without a baby, and I'm the doll Rupa doing these things. So that's kind of my realization that life-altering reality is similar to this practice, and that Pinu being married with his second son now has not gone through that same process because his wife is the one taking care of the baby all the time. Like, she's the one going through this selflessness process. So that's what I've been thinking about for the past couple of hours. It's like these crickets outside. I haven't heard crickets in a really long time. And I just feel like it's going to be a really long night, but I'm really inspired by how many realizations I've had in the like 10 hours that I've been here. So I'm just trying to, if I fall asleep and I wake up in the middle of the night, just observe that position, lying Rupa as the first thing, and changing positions and things like that. So I'm trying to cut out my mental observations, the way that I was kind of trying to track those as well. And as a beginner, just really, really focus on what Rupa is doing, the positions of Rupa, and that it will carry over when it needs to. And I think that applies to a lot of things in my life. I feel more affected and calm by this process than I have by kind of anything else in a really long time. So that's for right now.